along with this tap feature, I've got a question for you, and that's what is your go-to like default or end of the night beer? I know that a lot of my friends, PBR is one of them. A lot of my industry friends, it is Miller High Life, but I'd love to know like what other folks have. Is it Yingling? Is it Genesee? What's your kind of like go to show up at a bar? Just want to keep it simple. What do you go for? PBR is a solid choice. Not a bad beer and a decent. And you generally know that a lot of beers will have it. So with this particular tap handle, this is one of their vintage tap handles. It's worth noting this actually has a decent amount of heft to it. There's a couple of designs that PBR did that were similar to this style of design, and by that I mean you've got kind of your white center section with the silver ferrule at the bottom and some sort of phenol at the top. There's a few different designs that you may see around. Some of them are a little bit more of a standard cylinder. Other ones will curve in like that a little bit more. I don't have exact timing for these, but I do know that these typically, I believe, would have been pre-90s or maybe early 90s and before. If anybody does have more detail around that, I'd love to know. I know that they also had their lucite ones, but I believe a lot of those were earlier. Those I would have expected that those would have been more like 60s and 70s. So if people have details on the timing of it, I'd love to know. With this one, it is just so kind of standard iconic. You've got PBR, you've got the little designs on either side. You've got the red stripe going through it with the blue ribbon on the front. It says established in Milwaukee in 1844. All of those are just classic design elements. They do have all of the details down here. And it's worth noting that this is very much the same as you have on the actual beer itself. So on the can or bottle or whatever you're getting, that design and all of the text should be very, very similar. It's worth noting with this one that you do have your phenol up here on the top. You'll notice that this one has just a little bit of wear from age, but that is totally normal. And it's worth noting that this is a wider one, so some of them will just have the small phenol portion at the top. With this one, the way that they did it, it's this wider portion. Typically, that means that you can unscrew it, and there should be some sort of a center rod or something similar that's going through the center. This material is typically done out of a hard plastic. Sometimes it'll be out of a resin. And then down here on the bottom, we've got the phenol. These phenols are very notable because there's a few different designs on them. And I've called that out before, where you kind of have it curving in and then curving out in a couple of different places. That does use the standard 3/8/16 threading. I'd love to know what this originally said, this little portion there, if it just said made in China or if it had more details about who produced it. It is worth noting that with these phenols, sometimes they can be, ferrules, sorry, sometimes they can be a little bit tricky to replace. So that means that if you see one where you're missing it, it may be hard to find one that is the appropriate size for this. There are ones that are this sort of style that you can replace, but it may not be exactly the size. So very much worth noting that if you are picking up any taps like this, that you want to make sure that it is complete. Otherwise, it may be hard to get the appropriate parts. Same thing for the phenol up top. So the ferrule on the bottom and the phenol up top.